beats big, simple beats complex. And in the footnotes, a 5-point type in the Swiss font, the neutral Swiss font Helvetica or Geneva, we read the supporting theses, and that is that personal is better than corporate and physical than abstract. So in other words, you'd like to have gold in payment or silver coins in payment rather than a check or rather than a direct deposit. That's your premise. And that kind of idea of is a market-oriented, substance-oriented, and equity-based economy, the libertarian economy, I would say the Christian society, as we enjoy the progress of God's providence through the course of history, of course, continuingly improving. And the number, you want the number? Okay, 800-8949, 800-8949. David Toole is here. And my arguments are uber libertarian and uber decentralized. In other words, we need to have an end of corrupt centralized systems. We need to have an end to racketeering influenced corrupt organizations that are called states, as we are seeing more and more into that possibility that possibly states themselves are a kind of corrupt enterprise that is in Tennessee, that is strip mining the people, skimming the people, deceiving them with the complicity of the General Assembly, the courts, and the governorship. Chris Dahl is a candidate for county commission. Warren Mackey is the incumbent on the commission. He's had that job for about 12 years. It's not really a job; it's a calling. You're not really paid much. And Dr. Mackey is a former history professor and at Chat State, and a great admirer of FDR. FDR is his great hero. And the New Deal was, he argues, a good deal for the American people. And he will gladly defend TVA and probably many other important, significant parts of the collectivist heritage that is our that we can see there under the waving federal banner. On the 4th of July, we were thinking in that direction. Chris Dahl is 35 years old. He is, as he likes to describe it, a history investigator. And his theme for the campaign, as he knocks from door to door, as he can kind of give his elevator pitch, is kind of reform orientation. He's a dissenter. And I think it's fair to say, Chris, that you have a kind of libertarian perspective. How does libertarian perspective come into play in a local race?
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for having me on the radio show, and thank your listeners for listening to the show, because I'd like to make a note that you're the only person I see from any type of media outlet that's going to city council meetings and actually staying up on what's going on locally. To point on to my sort of conservative or libertarian side, I feel like government has over the years has had a overreach of authority. We need to reevaluate that reach that they've had, and this overreach of authority has become a burden onto the taxpayers or the people out there like me and you. So instead of like you were talking about the transportation issue, instead of going after the people who are running commerce, they're going after the little guy.
Right. That's a real problem. Well, let me ask you this. It's easy to say these things in the abstract. We can talk about liberty principles and physical being better than abstract and so on. How practically how would these ideas that you have, well, we want to hear what they are, first of all, but that I guess the listener, since we're talking about electioneering, wants to know, well, what would you do on the county commission? What are some concrete areas that you can identify here during the campaign? You're not in office yet. You don't have all that workload of government to deal with yet, but you're kind of on the outside looking in. Where are reforms necessary? Where are savings to be found, Chris Dahl?
Well, first, my campaign is all based on I want to make District 4, I want to make it number 1. And so in order to do that, we have to make sure that there's adequate funding going into my district. And if you look at it as a historical point of view, funding has not been allocated correctly into my district. So now you have a bunch of infrastructure problems. You have roads falling apart. You have, people getting harassed in their neighborhoods as well, being oppressed, things that should be looked into more in depth. And I believe that's why I'm running, is because I want to look into these issues more in depth, and I want to correct them and try to help the everyday person.
Well, just quickly, where, for the listener the listener in District 4 doesn't know the number of the district, what area of town are you talking about, or what part of the county?
Well, District 4 spans all the way from Wheeler Homes, which is on the Georgia border, all the way to Murray Hills, which is on Highway 58. And it's basically everything from Amicola almost to the Ridge. It excludes a few areas along the Ridge, but that's, it's mainly the inner city district, so most of it consists of city districts. And so I believe as well as a commissioner that has city districts, it's your job to make sure the city is putting funding into your district as well.
This is David Toulis, and we're talking with Chris Dahl, running for county commission. The incumbent is Warren Mackey. Now, say some things that are in the direction of, you might say, criticisms of the incumbent, or problems that he maybe has not addressed adequately or not addressed at all.
Well, I will state, when he first started out, he was a louder voice, so I'll give him props for that. But it seems like over the years that louder voice has fizzled out, and just recently there was a problem with trying to decide whether they should fire a magistrate, and this magistrate has issues of breaching the state constitution, losing some warrants and things like that could actually put the county in a bigger jeopardy. But instead of just deciding to let him go, they decided to spend more tax dollars on training and keep him on for 30 more days, and no telling what more damage he can create during those 30 days.
Well, what has Warren Mackey said or done about this problem?
He was actually in support to give the gentleman more training, even though his boss had stated that more training would not help.
Well, couldn't the listener think that, Warren Mackey seems like a good guy. He's a man of second chances. That shows character and grace.
Yes and no, because this gentleman in question was already granted a second chance, and his boss followed him around and attempted to train him, so that he was already given a little bit more leeway than most. And this is a magistrate position that pays pretty well, so you're not expecting just to hire somebody who doesn't know how to do their job.
What other points might be of interest, Chris Dahl?
Yes, it seems like nobody's talking out about school funding, but I've noticed that the schools get about $100 million allocated specifically for maintenance, but yet we've had a big backlog, about $267 million worth of maintenance. So how has it been able to backlog that large, and we don't hear nobody asking those type of questions? And so I think we need somebody to ask those questions, and if it takes going to the state level to get a resolution passed to allow the commissioners to audit the schools, then that's what needs to happen.
So an audit is needed?
Yes.
Is there waste in the county budget, Chris Dahl?
I believe there is. There's it seems like we spend a lot in gasoline, for example, and to me, we could utilize that expenditure a little better by not having to, travel all over. The city does the same thing through 311. We see 311 trucks go down our streets on a daily basis and pass piles up to go pick another pile up. So why can't they stop to pick those piles up along the way?
Tim Boyd has been fighting the Convention Visitors Bureau, the pro tourist organization, on its lack of openness, its lack of being able to provide a budget, a spending list. It comes to the county commission, from whom it gets, I think, about $6 to $8 million, with a two-page document that says, here's where the money is going. Tim Boyd is highly critical. He, in my mind, exemplifies what a county commissioner should be like. I might say Tim is not aggressive in other areas, but on certain points where he stands forth and shines forth, he's very good. And that would be, we're not able to account for this money that's collected from the hotel motel tax. What do you make of Tim Boyd? Is he just a crank? Is he just a crank and a grandstander, or is he really, as my listener suspects, probably a kind of a watchdog for the taxpayer?
Well, first, I'd like to say thanks for mentioning the Chattanooga Visitor Bureau, because I'd like to mention that as well. The document that Tim Boyd showed, that wasn't even provided by them. That was given to him by the IRS. So that shows the lack of accountability for the Chattanooga that we have over the Chattanooga Visitor Bureau. You know, that's one thing that I want to push. I believe that agencies like them and others that receive tax funding should abide by the Tennessee Open Meetings Act. That means that the public should be able to know what's going on, be able to attend board meetings and that such, and have a more of a say on what their type of business is going on. But yes, I do believe we need more commissioners like Tim Boyd. We need more voices speaking up. We need more people like you going to city council and talking out as well. You know, even if people are afraid to speak, you know, there's people who will stand up in solidarity with those people to give them a boost and say, here, we're going to stand with you no matter what it is you're willing to speak about.
Well, give my listener some idea, Chris Dahl. Oh, and the number, you want the number? Okay, the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. That's 800-8949. If you have a question for Chris Dahl or want to make a comment about really about anything, but we are trying to focus our attention in the next minute or two on the county. Chris, how would you give a sketch of your main ideas? What are your presuppositions as to how government should work, how county government should operate? Where is the libertarian thinking you must say in your philosophy, and how say something about how that would bring you as a good steward in that position?
Yes, I believe that government should provide your basic needs like garbage, service, repairing your infrastructure. Focus on those, your police department, your fire department. When they start doing things that overreach that, sort of like upping your sewer fees all the time, even though we're not seeing anything for that, and so it doesn't seem like no repairs are coming out of the money that we're giving in when we pay our property taxes. You know, that's supposed to go towards infrastructure around our home or in our district, but it doesn't seem like that money is going to be allocated there. It seems like it's almost going to other places, like maybe to build up Hickson or downtown Chattanooga or Ottawa. You know, in my district, the people feel like just as I do that it's time for money to be put in our district. And it's not just our district either. You know, there's other districts as well that are having the same issue as mine. You know, and I believe that we need louder voices across the board. And that's why I believe that more public participation is needed. You know, Tuesday at 6:00 is city council meetings. And then Wednesday at 9:30 are the meetings for the county.
9:30 a.m.
Yes.
What do you make of the idea of government planning and master plans? These structures of planning, the requirement for 20-year plans and so on, are written into the statute. The county, the city are bound by these processes that effectively give certain better types of people control over where cities grow, how they grow. How would you be a cooperative and friendly sort on the county commission to these processes, or would you somehow be hostile and maybe some would say maybe ineffective if you can't deal with them?
Well, first off, a lot of these master plans, you know, I don't believe that the majority of public knows about them, but, you know, these were set up, some of them 20, 30 years ago, you know, and then they try to build upon those along the way when they find new trendy things like the green infrastructure projects and stuff like that. But I believe that we need to reevaluate these plans, because what has happened, it seems, is that it has allowed investors and other developers to have sort of like a inside knowledge on what's going to happen in the future, so that way they know where to invest in that. And that's sort of where some of the corruption that you can see in our county government sort of comes from, and even in our city government.
Are you in favor of zoning or against zoning in principle?
I'm for smart development, and we do need zoning. So I'm sort of for it, but I'm not for all the zoning changes that we've been seeing lately. And I'm afraid that in the future, what we're going to see is form-based code, not only that has been pushed on the downtown area, but it's going to trickle out into the neighborhoods, and that's going to just change the whole look and dynamics of the community.
Well, what can you say about the best kind of development in Hamilton County. That is to say, the development of real estate and investment in capital structures that are there on the ground, fed by taxpayer-funded roads, sewers, and the like. What has to happen for development, if anything?
Well, I always hear over and over again that development does not want to come into Chattanooga until the infrastructure is there. We have a workforce development that believes that there's not proper skilled inventory. And what they mean by that is there's not enough skilled people to work these jobs. But that's not the problem. The problem is that these jobs don't pay enough money to entice the people to work there, and we, if anything, we lack skilled trades.
Well, my question was really, if I could back up just for a second, Chris Dahl, on development. That is to say, building things, the arrival of shopping centers, neighborhoods, factories, and it's kind of a question connected with zoning. Zoning sort of dictates how these things are done. What should happen in the next 20 years as far as the growth of the county? What do you see happening? What would you on the county commission do to either hinder the bad and encourage the good, or be neutral?
Well, one, we need to make sure when we do rezone a lot or allow the rezoning of that to happen, that these lots are able to handle the development that's going on them, because a lot of the times it doesn't seem like that's happening. We're having a real bad issue with slope development, and so that's creating more environmental impacts that are detrimental. We need more smart growth development instead of trying just to pack it in. We need to leave some green space for future growth as well. And that it doesn't seem like all that's being taken into perspective. It just seems like people are just worried about, maybe getting a kickback and allowing, somebody to develop out a site that shouldn't never get developed out because it might have been contaminated or can't even handle that structure.
Well, what you're saying does not sound very libertarian.
Well, I'm all for property owners' rights. See, and so we have to understand that when you're trying to go do a commercial development, you're sort of having it sort of goes against the basic person's property owner rights, because then you're trying to build more or try to extend that reach. Like, for example, if you have somebody who just wants to build go and start up a farm, but then you have somebody who wants to take that farmland next door and build an apartment complex, that doesn't fit together.
This is David Toulis, and caller, thanks for ringing in. The number is 800-8949, 800-8949. And we have Chris Dahl with us. What is your comment or question?
Hello?
Go ahead. What's your comment or question for Chris Dahl or David Toulis?
Well, I'd heard him talk about the infrastructure just a minute ago, and what did he mean by improving that?
Okay, thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
Yeah, what I mean by improving our infrastructure is if you look at it across the board, all across the county, where we have a bunch of sewer issues going on, where every time we have a rain event, our sewers are overflowing. So in order to even have smart development or even development, we have to make sure that we're taking care of those before allowing that development to come into that area. And, every month we pay a sewer fee. And
you mean we, the taxpayers, or we, the government?
We, the taxpayers, pay a sewer fee, every month. And it doesn't seem like that sewer fee is going to fix any of the issues. So that's basically theft of service right there. So we all need to be calling it for what it is, not trying to sugarcoat it either.
Okay, are you answering the caller's question? I'm not quite sure you are. What?
So
what's the answer?
When I mention infrastructure, that's the main thing I'm talking about is our sewers, then our roads, and then we can move on to fixing the sidewalks and other things. But we have to focus on the sewers before we can even fix the roads.
In conversations you've had with me, Chris Dahl, you often bring up wastewater and stormwater overflow. So, and you brought that up here just now. What's the main point that when you meet someone and have more than 2 minutes, what's the main point you make about the new tax on rainfall that's going to be imposed by, I think, the city, 50% gain in the tax on rainfall in Chattanooga? What's your main point or position there?
Well, the reason why I mention that a lot is because that's a blatant example of theft of service, because we're paying into something but we're not receiving anything out of it. you see storm drains all clogged up. You don't see no street sweepers coming to clean up the streets and make sure the drains aren't clogged. And so this is the issue that we have.
This is David Toulis and Chris Dahl. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and continue the fight.
Chris Dahl is running for county commission. The seat is now held by Warren Mackey, who's been in the job for about nearly 13 years. And my name is David Toulis, 92.7 FM. We've got some great sponsors here about Mobile Medics and Michael Leafy and Travel Makers. Be right back.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news.